Hey, where you go? Where you go? Where you go? Where you go? Well, I don't know if there's ever a time when you can say expropriation isn't personal. I think anytime you get to that level of determining who owns the land, I think it gets personal anyways.
Expropriation is taking somebody's property against their will.
It's beautiful. That's something that they find very striking, the openness in the spring or any season you look out and you see for long ways down the valley, all different directions, and it's just a beautiful view. People find it unexpected. They seem to find, like, they get to the edge of the valley and say, wow, I didn't think we had this in Manitoba or whatever.
This is what the place looked like before we took it over. There were the owner's residence. Was just there were 3 bachelors and 2 sisters.
Yeah.
Eh?
Yeah.
There was about 56 acres broken with 3 single plow tractors.
We've had it since ¡55 when the uncles and dad purchased it from the Deschambault family, and so, like I said, they've poured their heart and soul into it. So you work with it every day. It's so peaceful. There's some days when our kids were going to school, I'd see Dad's truck, the school bus, and my truck, and that's all we saw all day. So, you know, it's hard to put a price on that, you know.
Just over here by that trees, there's 2 trees over there, and the other one right behind the concession stand, behind the hydro pole. That's where the last Fort Ellice was. If you come in the summertime, you can maybe see where the stockade was, but there's nothing left of it. What was left of it, the rocks from the factor's house, were taken and moved over to build a cairn in behind us here to designate the site.
Well, in 2005, the RM of Ellice served us with an expropriation of notice of expropriation, and they wanted, in the notice, they wanted 288 acres. And our understanding was, from what the expropriation said, they wanted to guarantee public access and protect the historical site. I was kind of stunned. We couldn't believe it, because that site, for 40 years, my uncle and my father have allowed the DRM and village to use it for picnics, ball tournaments, rodeos. Schools used to have their track and field meet up there. They'd have their year-end picnics. All the baseball teams, the hockey teams would go up there and have their year wind-up.
In the 60s, the town, for a number of years, had swimming lessons here for all the kids. And that was free of charge too. Like, you'd come someday and there'd be just cars lined up along the road here. They'd have, you know, swimming lessons went on for 2 or 3 weeks.
Just come down here, Dad.
It used to be a 3-day affair, and first day was pork, second day was beef with the big barbecues, you know, and they'd go out at mid through all these trails that we built in the side hills, eh? And that we had to follow with a first aid wagon, one thing another, because there's kids on ponies and everything like that. Very hazardous. Now, to think that all they would cover is $1 million, one accident would have more than wiped out half of the
They were raising money for kids that with extra medical
Lions Club, eh?
with extra medical expenses, and so there was always some function going on, and they were never ever charged anything for the use of the land for 40 years.
He's given guided tours of the area here. Anyone that's phoned him said, Arthur, can you come? We've got some people from BC. Will you give him a guided tour? And he does this free of charge. He's done it for school kids from New Brunswick, Quebec, any school groups that wants to come out and wants a little history on the fort, he will do that for them. There's a lawyer in court one time, and he says, you know, because the Fouillards haven't been charging for the use of the land, we're not taking over their business. It's not a business that they're running. So basically our generosity was just thrown right back in our face. So, you know, you try and help out by offering people land and use because you want to help the community to prosper, and this is what happens. So like I said, it's very insulting to us. And then all of a sudden they felt that
we started putting some restrictions on it, that we wanted more control, not stop people, but just that they ask permission to go up there. And some people took offense to that. They felt that they didn't have to ask permission to be up there. And we decided that we wanted just a little more control of the site, because we had livestock up there, and we were insurance, you know, if you don't know what's up there, who's getting, you know, you're moving cattle, or you're moving around, or moving, like we haul hay bales and that, farm machinery. So that was more of our concern, and then vandalism and things like that too, and treasure hunters. It hurts him already. He doesn't show it too much, but it hurts him deeply, and being at 87, I think he's worried that this may not be settled before he, you know, like, you know, he's not a young man anymore, and that worries him that this may go on for years yet. So you may want to hang on to your camera here.
It changes the definition of land ownership, because you have no certainty of what you can do with your land and when somebody is going to take it away from you. For example, there's wind farms occurring throughout some parts of the province. If you have no desire of having this big windmill in your backyard and all the effects, because I'm told, although I haven't seen conclusive material, for example, it affects the GPS for farmers. So that they may not want it in their backyard, because it's farming is starting to be more and more dependent on GPS. But if you're a holdout and the municipality says, well, I need these extra 5 properties to make the project viable, you can't control what's going to happen on your land anymore. The municipality would simply be able to take it and flip it over to the wind farm company.
Well, the first offer for 288 acres was $57,600, and that included a mile of our privately built road, and plus the fact that the hydro was brought up there by my uncles, my father. Right behind us here, right along the edge of the hill here, the expropriation line will run, go right down the hill here and into our hay field, and then turn that way. And that was one thing they said, well, from the edge of the expropriation, you can't see any of the Fouillards buildings. And you can see my father's house, our house, and the rest of the buildings. So
the Fouillards had proposed to the municipality that the municipality only acquire 90 acres, which was what was traditionally used for their activities, and it included the historical sites.
We've talked to historical people, and they said up at Churchill, the site is only 40 acres. And if you go to Fort Garry, I don't know how big it is, but it's certainly not near 90 acres, and they want 288.
One of the processes is that the parties together choose an inquiry officer. And there were 2 days of presentations made to that inquiry officer. And after the presentations, he accepted the proposal by the Fouillards.
Okay, the area in black here is what they want to take. His recommendations was that they take the 90 acres that my father and I had offered them. Take a look at get some quotes on building a new road on the road allowance, as opposed to taking our private road for access up to the site. And also look at hiring archaeologists to do a study outside the 90 acres. And if there was enough heritage artifacts or heritage information that would prove outside the 90 acres that it was historical, then he would allow them to take the 90 acres.
You offered 90 acres?
Yeah, we offered that they could either buy it or lease it, and they turned us down. This independent inquiry cost the taxpayers $50,000. They had to pay our legal fees, their legal fees, and the cost of hiring the Mr. Rodrigue, who was the head of the independent inquiry. Now you do all that, and the taxpayers have to foot that bill, and then to just totally ignore the recommendations of them, we found it just, that knocked us on our heels. Like we said, you know, we went in there saying, well, we'll accept what he says. And they went in there, and it basically showed, and it's been proven, that unless they ruled in their favor, they weren't going to follow his recommendations.
The law in our province indicates that municipalities only have to consider the report. And that is interpreted in a very narrow way when it comes to property owners. It means that the councillors only have to read the report, and they don't really have to give it much weight, if any, at all.
be easier to understand if they could come and lay down a plan in front of me and say, this is what we want to do with that. This is where we've got grants to pay for all of this, and this is what we intend to do with it. But then it would be a lot easier to say, well, okay, now I can see why they need the 288 acres. But if they can't even prove to an independent inquiry that's an objective person why they need the 288, and he tells them to take the 90 and they go ahead and take the 288, it's just, to me, they're wasting their money. They have no idea what they're going to do with it.
It's extremely surprising to me that the municipality is engaging hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayers' money, and this is a small municipality with a small budget, without any concrete business plan. We have made numerous requests to see if there were any, and they have none, to our knowledge.
One time we hear that they're going to build a park, and then next we hear that they're going to do some walkways, and then we're not sure what they're going to do. They're talking about maybe having walkways and washrooms, but they're not going to reconstruct the old fort. Other than that, it's really vague. Like I said, we've asked every year under the Freedom of Information for their budgets, a feasibility study, what their budget cost is going to be as far as advertising, maintenance costs of the site, security of the site, how they're going to pay for all this, and they've never ever given us any information, so obviously it doesn't exist. Like, you know, when we had the inquiry, they came out and said, oh, it's a beautiful view, but like Dad says, we showed you what was there before they took it over. Like, there was no trees, no lake, no nothing. They've done a lot of development. It's added to the view, and people are getting it for free now. Like, if people want to come for a walk and just stop at the site and walk around, we let them do it anyways. So now, if they do have it here, we could have people partying late at night within 100 yards of Dad's house, and there's nothing we can do about it because it won't be in our control anymore.
Well, it's obviously of great concern because people can understand when property is taken for public purposes, but when it's taken for economic development and basically taking away a business or endeavor that you had, yeah, what prevents them from taking the ski hill that's close to their Assisipi ski hill? It's also an economic driver, a tourism project. If the municipality doesn't think that that project's being well run, what's preventing it from taking that project? I'd be worried too if I owned Assisipi ski hill.
And we started getting calls from concerned landowners from Saskatchewan, Manitoba, all over that were reading a bit of the press on it, and they said, well, this can't be happening. You can't be serious. And I said, well, yeah, it's happened. And you know, some of them got the court decision and read it, and their biggest fear was the precedent that was being set, that if an RN can take your land and without a business plan and just basically state that it's good for the community and we should have it, it's is there any business that's not or any land that is safe?
People aren't there elected at those positions to run a business. They're elected to do things in the public welfare and for the public good. So what happens then if some councillors who are not answerable to anybody for a bad business decision spend hundreds of thousands of dollars of municipal taxpayers' money, the thing goes sour, the ratepayers have no recourse against the councillors because the decision was made under a valid statutory authority. Their legal recourse is limited to getting compensation.
Well, I don't know if there's ever a time when you can say expropriation isn't personal. I think anytime you get to that level of determining who owns the land, I think it gets personal anyways.